U.S. Supreme Court appears ready to allow Tennessee's ban on transgender health care for children. After hearing today's oral arguments, Tennessee's law bans puberty blockers and hormone therapy for transgender minors.
SCOTUS updates. Roll the dice, Josh. Which Supreme Court Justice would you like to hear from first?
I think Alito did the best.
Yeah.
All right, so I got the Alito clip. Here we go.
A question about the state of medical evidence at the present time. In your petition, you made a sweeping statement, which I will quote. Overwhelming evidence establishes that the appropriate gender-affirming treatment with puberty blockers and hormones directly and substantially improves the physical, psychological well-being of transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria. That was in November 2023. Now, even before then, the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare wrote the following. They currently assess, quote, that the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits of these treatments, which is directly contrary to the sweeping statement in your petition. After the filing of your petition, of course, we saw the release of the Cass report in the United Kingdom, which found a complete lack of high-quality evidence showing that the benefits of the treatments in question here outweigh the risks. And so I wonder if you would like to stand by the statement that you made in your petition, or if you think it would now be appropriate to modify that and withdraw the statement that there is overwhelming evidence establishing that these treatments have benefits that greatly outweigh the risks and the dangers.
I, of course, acknowledge, Justice Alito, that there is a lot of debate happening here and abroad about the proper model of delivery of this care and exactly when adolescents should receive it and how to identify the adolescents for whom it would be helpful. But I stand by that there is...
By it.
She stands by it. No, Alito did a great job, and he clearly did his homework on this one, because he was citing the Cass report chapter and verse, which of course is the study that we pointed to on Wednesday discussing this about the effects of doing so-called gender-affirming care and transitioning minors actually longitudinally shows that it does more harm to them than it would had they just waited it out, as it were.
Right.
So actually suicide ideation increases in kids who undergo this treatment as minors prior to adolescence. And he cites this to them, and he essentially backs her into a corner of having to say that she doesn't accept the Cass report, or she starts pointing to other reports that have happened here in the United States, which again, we went over this on Wednesday, were funded by the big pharma who is financially invested in child gender transmutilation surgeries. So Alito did a fantastic job here of pointing that out. I think the best moment he had, though, was when he got her to admit that gender identity is not an immutable characteristic.
Oh, wait, no, hold on.
Oh.
Well, because what Tom had shown was the interaction between Alito and the Solicitor General, which the Solicitor General is the part of the Department of Justice. That's why the Biden administration was arguing, against this good Tennessee law. Mm-hmm. And then the ACLU lawyer, which is the transgender lawyer, that's that
Strangio.
Chase Strangio, yeah.
Chase Strangio. That's where that interplay happened. And so the so-called transgender lawyer gets up there and says, I think that the record shows that the discordance between a person's birth, sex, and gender identity has a strong biological basis and would satisfy an immutability test. Because the whole idea is there's a lot more strength in the law if you can say something is an immutable characteristic.
Well,
for example,
of the Civil Rights Act,
a black person could say, I'm being discriminated against because I'm black, and that's immutable. I can't change that. It's an immutable characteristic.
Right.
So do you have that on tape where he says this?
No, I have the one of Ketanji Brown Jackson making that.
Yeah, okay, hold on.
Get there. We'll get there. But Alito did this really well. Go ahead, Josh. Yeah. Tell the rest of the story.
Alito comes back and basically says, well, okay, so let me get this straight. Does transgender status apply to people who are gender fluid? And the transgender lawyer says yes. Then Alito asks, well, do some individuals change their gender identity? And the transgender lawyer, of course, says yes. So Alito says, so not immutable.
Right.
So it's not immutable, right?
So it's not immutable.
That was the end. The end of the
right into the bear trap.
Well, Clarence Thomas, someone brought it up in the chat too. He had a really sneaky comment here.
Yeah, this was good.
I can share the transcript on this.
I could
too.
listen to him all day.
He's the best. Well, he doesn't speak much. He speaks
No.
actually the least in oral arguments of all the Supreme Court justices.
Chart.
But he springs another trap of ask the question to the ACLU lawyer, what remedy are you seeking? Strangio, flummoxed by such a seemingly simple question, said an injunction. Justice Thomas then asked, practically, you would get different treatment based on sex. And the trap was laid. Strangio said the plaintiff, a girl who identifies as a boy, would be allowed to get drugs for, quote, a typical male puberty, despite having, quote, birth sex of female. That answer made clear that girls who identify as boys would get a right under the Constitution to testosterone, but boys who identify as boys would not, which is ... sex discrimination.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's just...
Laid another trap. It was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and Ben Domenech had the point that said, you know, Samuel Alito would be considered the greatest living American, if not for the fact that he sits next to the greatest living American. Thomas.
That would be
I can't help but make this point. Catholic Vote started in 2005, and we, you know, okay, you can blame us for John Roberts, whatever. But George W. Bush got out there, and after the great Justice William Rehnquist died, he's like, okay, I'll have Roberts be the chief, and then I'll pick someone else to fill Senator Day O'Connor's spot, which, thank goodness. He wanted to put Harriet Miers on the Supreme Court. Harriet Miers. So terrible. Catholic Vote was one of like 3 organizations, like day one, we're like, hell no. And we opposed it. Withdrawmyers.org or whatever. We campaigned like hell against this. And everyone in the White House, Bush White, was like, you're not loyal, blah, blah, blah. You'll never be anything in this town. And we're like, yeah, pound sand. We don't care. And we rallied people against that. We got Alito in there instead of Harriet Miers. Thank the good Lord. He's the one who wrote the Dobbs decision. He's killing it on this. Thank God we have Samuel Alito on the Supreme Court, not Harriet Miers.
God is still blessing America.
So can I please share my favorite part?
Yep.
I like the bad parts. You like the good parts. I like the bad parts. So Ketanji Brown Jackson, here we go.
Being drawn by the statute. That was sort of like the starting point. The question was whether it was discriminatory because it applied to both races and it wasn't, necessarily invidious or whatever. But, as I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
Yes, I think that's exactly right, that there is absolutely a parallel between any law that says you can't act inconsistent with a protected characteristic and in all other contexts.
Just in case you missed that, yes, Ketanji Brown Jackson just compared banning medical transitions on minors' genitals to bans on interracial marriage. That is correct. That is what she said.
Yep.
From the woman who doesn't know what a woman is comes interracial marriage is the same as parents being able to chop off their kids'
I'm surprised she even knows what marriage is if she doesn't even know what a woman is.
I know.
And why is she on this?
Guys.
Why is she even talking to this Supreme Court case, talking about transgender stuff?
She accused herself.
Yeah, she's not a biologist. What is she doing trying to argue this case?
There were signs, guys.
She and Sotomayor are dumber than a box of hair. I mean, it's just like so worthless. They should both be impeached and just pick some liberal who's not a total flipping idiot. Like, at least, okay, Elena Kagan is dangerous because she's smart. I never underestimate Elena Kagan. She's a brilliant legal mind. But so does Sotomayor and Ketanji, what? Give me a break. She's absolute idiots. And they talk the most. There's the chart that showed all the 9 justices. She talks more than almost all the rest of them combined. My goodness, you just want to poke your ears in because she's
my goodness.
the argument she makes.
Well,
I just wish I could be.
Josh,
I'm sorry.
my other favorite moment was Sotomayor saying, Matthew Rice was the Tennessee Solicitor General. He said, how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits? Sotomayor cut him off and said, every medical treatment has risk, even including aspirin, was a direct quote.
And you're like,
I don't know.
Wait a minute.
Taking an aspirin is different than cutting off my genitals.
What? What?
Last time I checked.
I'd rather take a Tylenol than chop off a healthy limb.
It's like behind door number 1, aspirin. Door number 2, cut off your junk. I'm going to say no to that.
That one got me. I was like, yes,
The risks
the
are
risk is
acceptable.
exactly the same of mutilating children and taking aspirin. And then also, how could I forget? Where was all this concern for medical treatment risk when it came to mandating that everyone got the COVID vaccine if you wanted to live your life? If you wanted to go on
It's not even
public
a vaccine.
transportation,
It's a medical
it's a medical
therapy.
treatment that was completely novel and never tested. So don't get me going on all that.
Angry
Sotomayor.
populist Tom comes out.
Let's just say she missed that argument when all that was coming down the pipe. I don't know where she developed this concern for medical risk all of a sudden.